Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rake the Take, a golf betting podcast hosted by me, Chris Lewis. And this week we're going to be talking about the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, which takes place at TPC Craig Ranch in the great state of Texas. It is an approximately 7,300 yard par 71 golf course. I definitely have to say that this is one of the easiest tests on the PGA Tour. If you really want to be able to contend at this event, you're going to have to create and score plenty of opportunities. Overall, it's pretty average in terms of its length, so distance is not a huge predictor this week. Whether or not you're short or long off the tee, I think both types of players can really attack this course. And the rough is also really not that penal as well, so missing the fairways will not really preclude anyone from scoring this week. There are some fairway bunkers that are difficult to approach the greens from if you miss the fairway. But outside of that, this course is really simple to attack. So having some excellent irons and wedges is going to be really important this week, just to be able to maximize your rounds. Around the greens, there's really not that much trouble outside of a few tricky bunkers. Just avoiding bogeys is going to be critical this week because there's going to be so many birdies. You don't want to set yourself back. A bogey will be definitely twice as penal this week than in normal weeks, just because most people aren't going to be making them on these holes. And on the putting greens, they're prime for scoring. As long as you're able to create chances, you should be able to score. Unless you're just like abhorrently bad at putting, but we bet those guys anyway. I'm just joking, but yeah. Let's just kind of get into the card this week. It's a pretty small card this week. I'm not trying to stretch myself too thin at an event like this, especially when you have a player as great as Scotty Scheffler leading the odds board at plus 275. Geez, that is just such a low number. I'm not going to be on there this week, but hopefully I can get one of these long shots that randomly wins in an event that he's in, kind of like a Davis Riley type of guy, or even Steven Yeager when he won the Houston Open last year. But yeah, Taylor Moore, he's the first guy on my card this week. He's been quietly having a very solid season on the PGA Tour this year. He hasn't had many opportunities of contention, but the former Valspar winner has really done some good at the American Express and the WM Phoenix Open this year, where he had 2 top 10 finishes. The main key for him is just the lack of missed cuts. He's been making a lot of cuts, putting up some decent results, maybe not great results. But I think the big thing for him is that his driving's been great. He's in the 84th percentile on driving. Mainly because he hits it pretty far off the tee, like in the 80th percentile. And not to mention his short game has also been very good, where he ranks in the 84th percentile around the greens and the 79th percentile in putting. Where he's been average is with his approach play, which that ranks in the 55th percentile. So it's not either terrible nor is it great. But at this week, I think players that maybe struggle with their approach play could do better, just because these greens, are pretty large. Like many players are going to be making greens in regulation, so you can kind of make putts from anywhere. But overall, like ideally, yeah, you want to be hitting it close so you can create as many easy chances as you can. But I don't think that's going to be an issue for him this week. He's played well here in the past. The only time he's played well here was that he finished tied for 32nd in 2022, and he gained strokes in all 3 tee to green categories. And he just kind of had a bad week putting. So I think that's a really encouraging sign for me, because he typically is a great putter. And I think that, I think he has a really good chance at contending this week. I like his odds at at 60 to 1, at plus 6,000. And I think he's a good bet for top 5. I got that at plus 1,000. And, I have 3 units on him to finish in the top 40 at plus 105. I'm also on the top 10 and top 20, like I usually am for all these guys. But yeah, no, I think Taylor Moore is really going to be a good bet this week. But you don't have to bet the top 20 and top 10 if you're trying to limit your exposure this week. I definitely recommend the top 5, the outright, and the top 40 though for sure. Yeah, let's keep going. We got Doug Gim, the Gim Reaper. He's back on our card after kind of disappointing at the Cognizant Classic a couple months ago. He was in contention for us, and he had really such an amazing approach week. If he just had a better week putting, he probably would have won that week. So it was definitely very disappointing that he missed the ball on that one. But I still have major confidence in his game from tee to green. Since then he's had some bad results here and there, but it's really all just kind of because of the putting. The putting has just been so bad. He's been in the 6th percentile in putting. But tee to green, like I said, he's been great. 85th percentile in accuracy off the tee. He's an excellent approach player in the 87th percentile, and decent around the greens at the 61st percentile. He's played well here before with a tie 19th finish. And then, he's had 2 missed cuts, but I still think the T19 shows that he can do well here. Overall, he's also done well at other birdie fests, like contending at the Shriners Children's Open in the fall, finishing 2nd place there, despite his bad putting. And I think at 125-1, Gim offers a lot of value, given that he's already contended this season in a much stronger field. And I think he's a good bet for placements as well, just across the board. Takumi Kanaya. The 8-time Japanese Tour winner, Takumi Kanaya, he hasn't not been able to create the same magic on the PGA Tour now that he's a full-time member. And it's a bit weird that he hasn't been able to do that, because of his acumen as a player. But, his approach play has been bad in the Shot League events that we have. It's a small sample size overall, relatively. But in these events also, his accuracy off the tee has been great. Around the green game and putting have been very decent as well. At the Zurich last week, he gained strokes in all categories, helping Ryo Hisatsune finish T18th for the team event. Maybe a good week at New Orleans, will help spark some inspiration for him to be able to retain his PGA Tour card this year. Given it's a weak field, I think betting Kanaya at 200-1 is a smart long shot play. He's an 8-time winner, so I think him being in contention is not, that big of an ask. And I think he would do well in that situation if given the chance. Given that he has win equity overseas. Obviously, winning on the PGA Tour is a different animal. But, I do think he has a good game overall. And I think, despite the fact that his approach play hasn't been good on the PGA Tour, maybe that's a skill set that could really kind of become a lot more consistent this week, given that these are easier greens to make in regulation and that maybe he can kind of just create some more scoring opportunities that way. But yeah, 200-1, and with the placements, I think he's a good bet just kind of across the board. And I'm not sure if I think I missed this as well, but yeah, Gim, I'm also on his placements as well. Just wanted to make sure I said that. We got 2 more guys this week. Grayson Sigg. It's been an up and down year for him. After an excellent start to 2025, where he had a team 9th finish at the Farmers Insurance Open, he's on a bit of a stretch of lackluster play with a lot of missed cuts recently. But I think he's another player that could benefit from having a good week last week at the Zurich Classic. Even though his duo missed the cut, he gained strokes in all 4 categories, and he had which could signify that he may have found something. He's a good approach player, ranking in the 79th percentile. He's accurate off the tee, ranking in the 81st percentile. Around the greens, he's very solid, ranking in the 61st percentile. And really where he struggles is with his putting, and where he's in the 16th percentile. And his TPC Craig Ranch even hasn't really been that great of a course for him. He's missed the cut here in all 3 of his starts. However, I still believe he could have a good week this week because of his skill sets. From tee to green, there's really a lot to like about his game. And at 250-1, it's a good long shot bet, and I would recommend taking his placements as well. It just feels like that, given his acumen as a player, he shouldn't be that deep down the board. He's won 2 times in the Korn Ferry Tour, so I just really wouldn't doubt him. And then finally, we got Tommy Morrison. And Tommy Morrison's a top 10 amateur in the world from the University of Texas. He played at the Open Championship last year, making the cut and finishing T60, which is incredibly impressive for an amateur, even though he wasn't, really deep in the leaderboard. He's very powerful off the tee and with his ball striking. The short game is something that he may need to clean up for this week if he wants to do something special. But, I think he's overall a very high caliber talent, and we've seen plenty of college players do well on the PGA Tour recently. So 400 to 1, I don't see why Morrison cannot be another one of those guys. I think he's a good bet across the board with placements as well. So yeah, really that's it this week. Just to kind of review, I got Taylor Moore at 60 to 1. And with the placements, Doug Gim at 125 to 1. Takumi Kanaya at 200 to 1. Grayson Sigg at 250 to 1. And Tommy Morrison at 400 to 1. So yeah, thank you for listening, and best of luck if you tail any of these plays.